Hi guys, today we're talking about growing spinach, one of the easiest and most nutritious greens you can grow in your garden, even if you're a beginner. I'm Brittany from By Brittany Goldwyn. I post videos about plants and projects, and today we're going to be talking about when, where, and how to plant spinach, as well as caring for and harvesting it, saving seeds, growing it over the winter, and growing it indoors. So let's get started. So to get started, it's important to know that spinach is a cool season crop. So when you think about gardening, a lot of people think about late spring and early summer when they're growing like tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers. But spinach actually grows best between 40 and about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. So that makes it a great choice for super early spring or even late winter and fall gardens. Now, if it gets into the 80s consistently and the days get too long, the spinach will start to suffer and turn bitter and just generally will not grow very well. So this is a great cooler weather crop. Now, whether you're planting in the ground, in a raised bed, or in pots or containers, like these long containers I have here in my greenhouse, spinach is going to need a well-draining, nutrient-rich soil. So generally, that's going to mean any sort of high-quality raised bed soil amended with a good compost, or a container potting soil like what I have these spinach and lettuce plants in is going to work just fine. Now, another reason spinach is so good for beginners is because it responds super well being direct sown. So that essentially means you're taking the seed and you're putting it right into the soil in whatever you're growing the spinach in. And this is compared to starting something early in like a seed starting tray, either indoors or in a greenhouse like I'm in right now, under grow lights, something like that. A lot of people will start spinach under grow lights and they'll start them early and transplant them outdoors, and that's totally fine if you want to try that. But generally, spinach does not respond as well to being transplanted from a seed start to where you're growing it. And since it generally grows so easily just by popping a seed or two into soil, I don't bother with doing spinach transplants. I just plant them directly in the garden. Now, once you're ready to plant your spinach seeds, all you need to do is pop them in your soil about a ½ inch deep. And as you can see with this pot here, I think I put like 6 spinach seeds in this pot to start with. And I put them pretty close together because I like the plants to grow a little bit bunched up, but you can also thin out the plants as they get bigger, which basically just means plucking out a few of the baby plants, which is what I did to this little pot of spinach growing here. I think I started off with about 6 or 7 seeds in there, and now I've thinned it out to 4 plants, which I'm just going to let continue growing until I have to either pop out more or they're done for the season. Once your spinach seeds really start to get going, like I have here in this bed, you'll want to keep them moist but not overly wet. So it is currently early March here in Maryland Zone 7A, and I have had these seeds planted for quite a while. So they've been a little bit slow going over the winter. I actually haven't really watered these that much at all because I know that it's going to snow on them, occasionally rain, and give them the moisture that they need. But as temperatures get a little bit higher here and the days get a little bit longer, I will probably start to add them into my watering routine when I'm watering all of my other new plants in my raised beds. And in ideal conditions, you should be able to start harvesting leaves from your plant in about a month to a month and a half, depending on how big you want those leaves to get before you start harvesting. And I'll show you guys an example of a plant that I took a bunch of leaves off of yesterday. You can see I just came in with scissors and started clipping off some of these outermost leaves, leaving the innermost leaves to continue growing. And this will ensure that you continue to get a continuous supply of spinach as the plant continues to grow. If you snip off from the middle, that's not a good idea. You definitely want to be taking from the outermost set of leaves so that that growth can continue coming up from the middle of the plant. Spinach grows really well in partial to full sun, so that means in the spring and fall, when it's not as hot and the sun is not as intense, you can have it in one of your full sun beds. But as those days get longer and it gets warmer, those full sun beds may be providing too much light for your spinach. Now, you can eke out a little bit more spinach as temperatures are rising by putting it in a container or putting it in a shaded bed where it gets a little bit less light and heat. But eventually you are going to notice that the heat and light become too much for spinach as you get into summer, and you will see it start to bolt. Bolting is also referred to as going to seed, and it's basically what happens when your spinach just goes into survival mode. It'll throw up like a stalk with flowers in the middle, and then those flowers will then produce seeds that you can harvest and save. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is something I've noticed growing here in Maryland Zone 7A. I have been planting my spinach earlier and earlier, even earlier than what some of the planting timelines online give you as recommended windows for growing spinach. And that's because all it really takes is like one day of a ton of light or a really, really hot day to cause your spinach to bolt and go to seed. Now, if I plant it a little bit earlier, I feel like that gives me more of a chance of getting enough of a harvest from my spinach plants before it gets too hot and you notice it's starting to bolt and go to seed. When you do see your plant starting to bolt and go to seed, you can go ahead and clip off all of those leaves that are worth taking and eating because they'll turn pretty bitter as the plant is going to seed. And you can let it flower and produce seeds that you can save for growing your spinach next year if you're growing an open pollinated or heirloom variety, which all of the spinach types that I grow are, and most of the ones you encounter probably are as well. If you're not sure, it will be on the seed packet, or you can just search the name of the type of spinach you're growing. Now, as far as greens go, I would say that spinach is, in my experience, one of the hardiest to grow. I grow it in a variety of situations all around my yard throughout the winter, and even when I've seeded it in late fall, it has done very well with growing conditions. These I put in very late fall, so way too late for a fall crop of spinach. These are Bloomsdale spinach plants, and as you can see, they have not only sprouted, but they have gotten a couple sets of true leaves over the last month or so. Now, I did decide to add a partial hoop house over top of these just a couple of days ago to see if adding the partial hoop house with only the back open here would help raise the temperature just slightly on even overcast but mostly sunny days here in the winter, to see if that would help speed their growth along a little bit. So I'm hopeful that that will help a little bit, but I do know from experience that spinach can grow very happily in a garden, even if it's the middle of winter. And here are the remnants of a Bloomsdale spinach plant that I had growing in the fall. I picked all of the leaves off, but I decided to leave the plant in here to see how it would perform. And I would say the 2 leaves it has on it right now, I have probably clipped about 6 sets of leaves off of this plant for salads over the winter so far. And again, that's not very long. This is Maryland Zone 7A in late December, so it has been pretty cold for a while. So that's some really good growth on spinach. I think the difference between these 2 situations are the spinach that's grown more was well established in the soil before it got too cold, whereas the spinach that's a little bit more slow growing, I sowed very late in the season. So it's growing, but it's not growing very fast and nearly as fast enough for me to be snipping it even weekly to add to salads. And here's another example of some mature spinach plants really battling through the winter. This is in my mom's garden from her fall garden, and she just left her mature spinach plants from her fall garden in the ground, and they've been thriving throughout the winter. These have been under inches of snow and ice and frost and even really unseasonably cold temperatures here in Maryland Zone 7A. And we've just been trimming and eating them all winter. So they've been completely unprotected and are still in great shape, and that really gives you an idea of exactly how hardy spinach can be. Now, if you don't have a big garden, spinach can actually make a really good candidate for indoor growing as well. As long as you have some sort of pot that's about 6 inches deep, I would say even a little bit more shallow, you could probably grow spinach in, and some nice, well-draining potting soil and a sunny enough windowsill or area in your home. Now, a lot of times, even sunny windowsills are not enough to support vegetative growth. So if you find that your plants are stretching and just looking a little leggy and flopping over as they're trying to grow, that probably means they're a little leggy and they need some more light. So you can just get some sort of grow light, a full spectrum grow light, and keep it on for about 14 or so hours a day to give your spinach plants the extra boost they need to grow. Now, growing during the winter when it's too hot to grow outside, but you're in a climate controlled home, is a really great way to grow spinach. And every home is a little bit different with light and temperature and humidity, so you may have to move it around to find what works best for you in your home, but spinach is a very good candidate for indoor growing. And that about wraps up what I have to say about growing spinach pretty much all year round. I hope this inspires you to add some spinach to your cool weather garden or to try your hand at growing it indoors. I have a lot more fun gardening content coming up since we are coming up on spring here in Maryland Zone 7A, so make sure to like and subscribe for more. Until next time, happy planting!